Prior to 1900, very little sex education existed in the United States. In 1892, the National Education Association called for moral education in the schools, which gradually led to the implementation of sex ed programs. In 1913, Chicago became the first major city to introduce sex ed in high schools, but after an onslaught of protests from the Catholic Church, the program was suspended, and the superintendent was forced to resign. During World War I, there was an extensive outbreak of STIs among U.S. soldiers. As a result, in 1919, the U.S. Department of Labor's Children's Bureau issued a report stating that soldiers would have been better off if they were taught sex ed in schools. By 1920, up to 40% of U.S. schools had hygiene and sexuality programs. Fast forward several years to 1964. At this time, Mary Calderone founded the Sexuality Information and Education Council of the United States, which created progressive sex education curricula for the time. As sex education increased, controversy developed over the content of the programs. The Adolescent Family Life Act of 1981 gave government funding to abstinence-only curriculums created by religious conservatives. On the other side of the debate stands proponents of the Guidelines for Comprehensive Sexuality Education, which includes a wider variety of information about contraceptives and sexual orientation. This disagreement over the proper approach to sex ed has continued into present day. Currently, only 22 states require sex education, and only 13 require that the information presented is medically accurate. This is problematic because comprehensive sex ed has been proven effective. Since 1990, the teen pregnancy rate has decreased by 51%. The Guttmacher Institute speculates that this was caused by the establishment of solid sex ed. It is also important to note that many schools are teaching abstinence-only sex ed, but the 2004 Waxman report found that most abstinence-only programs contained misinformation about abortion and STIs. Not only does this prevent young people from accessing sexual health resources, but it also develops an uninformed electorate who may one day have to vote on important decisions, such as the funding for Planned Parenthood. Another problem with the current state of sex ed is that many curricula use gender stereotypes and are not LGBTQ inclusive. This makes an unwelcoming classroom environment and reduces the effectiveness of sex ed. So what are some solutions to the shortcomings of the sex education system? Currently, the CDC has 16 recommended benchmarks for sex ed, including STI and pregnancy prevention. However, there is no requirement for states to follow these benchmarks. Some states teach as little as 20% of the CDC's recommended topics. The first step in solving this issue would be a federal mandate for all states to follow the CDC benchmarks. This would include a requirement that all high schoolers complete a sex ed unit unless their guardians specifically opted them out for personal beliefs. Beyond this fundamental federal mandate, there should also be a change in the conversation used for sex ed. The CDC standards should be widened to include more gender identities and sexual orientations, including an explanation of non-traditional pronouns, along with information about STI prevention for all sexual orientations. All students should also be required to learn about enthusiastic consent before leaving high school in an effort to reduce rape culture on college campuses. In conclusion, the solution to the disparity in sex education is to create federally mandated sex ed standards, including LGBTQ inclusion and enthusiastic consent. The sources used to create this video include Planned Parenthood, the New York Times, Newsweek, and Governing.com. Visit their websites to find out more.